Hi guys, welcome to the One Zen Fitness Academy podcast with me, your host, Kieran Cronin. Join me as we discuss everything health, wellness, fitness, rehabilitation, sport and lifestyle, and anything else that we can get our hands on. If you rate this podcast, please share amongst your friends, family, lovers, mistresses, and anyone else. Please spread the wealth of health today.
This podcast is brought to you by, yes, you guessed it, the One Zen Academy. So, yes, that's right, we sponsor our own podcast. There's nothing wrong with that. So, a couple of things I want to get across to the listeners. So, we have a fantastic new online course that's open to absolutely everyone. So if you're, in lockdown, if you're off work or even on work, doesn't matter really, and you're trying to keep up with your fitness training, then we've developed this fantastic course called Be Your Own Fitness Trainer. So it's 7 lessons, complete audio explanation throughout each of the segments. So it's very visual. There's audio that will accompany it to give you a lot more information. And there's videos. There's videos of, how to do warm-ups, cool-downs, mobility to increase joint range and health. Dynamic stretching, static stretching, different exercises, myth busting. We also go into developing your cardiovascular program. So we talk about different zone training. We look at energy systems and how the body produces energy. We look a bit of the anatomy and physiologies to give you reasons to why you're actually doing what you're doing. Towards the end, we go through real program design, reps, sets, the tempo of each rep and why that's important. The range of motion in certain exercises, why that's important. We look at meditation for enhanced recovery. There's a nutrition segment. So even if you just bought it just for the nutrition segment, fantastic. You'll get a lot out of it of how to develop and develop your own nutritional programs. And then we look at putting it all together at the end. So you get an awful lot. We've taken elements from our level 2 and level 3 diploma in personal training. So we've taken elements from that, but we've obviously, diluted it down a little bit, because that's a 12-week program and this is just 7 lessons. But the initial feedback, the people who've bought it has been phenomenal. So thank you very much. But it only costs, and here's the real clincher. It only costs $45 US. Yes, that's right, $45 US. Obviously, we're from the UK, so it's the equivalent of 34 British pounds. That's it, just a one-off payment. And I make it clear during the program that you can message me at any point if you want more explanation, if you want a deeper dive into anything. Because for those of you who have bought it, you're part of the One Zen family, and we look after family, obviously. So yeah, what are you waiting for, really? So the web address, the very specific web address is www. I don't know why I have to say that. One Zen for all. So that's one Zen, the word, for the number and all. .thinkific.com. So that's one Zen, the number 4 all. The word think. And then ific, IFIC.com. So one Zen for all .thinkific.com. And then you just purchase and then become part of our family, become part of our tribe. What are you waiting for? As well as that, we also obviously have the One Zen Academy, which we can develop you to become a personal trainer, a sports rehabilitation therapist, a yoga practitioner. So we are based in Milton Keynes in the UK, but we are coming to a city near you soon. Well, as soon as, lockdown and everything finishes. And we will develop further afield to different countries. So yeah, what are you waiting for? You can even message me random questions and I'll be happy to answer. My personal email address is kieran.cronin@yahoo.co.uk. So it's KIERON.Cronin, CRONIN @yahoo. Yes, I'm old school. .co.uk. I know Yahoo's very 90s, right? But what can I say? I'm trapped in a bubble. So thank you, and listen to this awesome podcast. Welcome, guys, to this solocast where we're going to address and talk about core stability, or I should say the myth of core stability. So it's primarily aimed at runners of all sorts, whether it's a sprinter all the way up to ultra marathon runners, triathletes, but also if you're like a weightlifting professional and so on, you can get a lot out of this. My background on this is, approximately 17 years worth working through rehabilitation and performance. So I like to think I've got quite a depth of knowledge and experience within this. With core, and when we talk about core, it's always open to criticism, and I get that. I'm completely okay with that. Because as soon as I say the myth of core stability, people tend to get on their high horse, say, well, your core has to be stable. I don't agree. I also think it can't be too lax either. And I will explain this concept and go into it. So I'm going to reterm core stability to core ability. Okay, so not stability, but core ability. So how is your core ability? So most people have an idea about the core, and it may fit into one of these categories. It could be, it's your torso, it's your front, back and sides, or it's your abdomen area, or it's the bit around your belly button. And the list could go on. But what is it really? How should we really train it? And should we train it at all? Well, train it in, that sense of structured, formal sessions. The reality is people and trainers, coaches, therapists, and so on, they will often state that a runner needs core stability. But how stable does my core actually need to be? Too much stability and I won't move very much or very well. Too lax and I'll move too much. So we need that Goldilocks core, not too stable and not too lax. So why do runners and coaches alike still talk about core stability? So I'm going to reterm that core ability. So what is it? Well, let me give you an idea about the anatomy and how it works, and then you decide what it is and what it is not. So we have a deep intrinsic part to our core, which are the muscles that control the spine and can feed back and tell other muscles what to do. So picture your spine. So you got your spine, your vertebral column stacked on top of each other. And there are muscles that will control flexion by causing extension. So that's where your spine bends forward and back. Lateral flexion. So you imagine you're bending to the side, and rotation. I'm pretty sure you know what that is. So we have muscles called the rotatores, and there's different pronunciations I might add before anyone writes in and says, well, actually it's called whoa. It's rotatores, okay? Just deal with it. Semispinalis, interspinalis or interpinalis, and intertransversali. And these funky sounding names are really the muscles which control the vertebrae. They're very heavy in nerves. So imagine, these have hundreds, thousands, some have billions and trillions of nerves. To put that in perspective, your bicep has 2. Okay, so these are really nerve heavy. And they will feed back into your nervous system where your spine is in space and time, and then ultimately where your arms and legs should then be. So straight away you may be able to kind of start piecing it together. Oh, they might be involved heavily in balance and proprioception. You're right. So it has like a ripple effect. So if you drop a pebble in some water, the first ripple is really small. This will be your vertebrae. And as the ripple expands, it becomes bigger and more extreme. So the big ripples, the big waves, they're like your arms and legs. But it all depends on that first little ripple, what your spine's doing. So if your thoracic spine moves, then your shoulder, arm, hand will move more. If your thoracic spine doesn't move at all, then this can normally result in a shoulder injury. So if it doesn't move at all, you could argue that it's too stable. And more often than not, when a thoracic spine gets stuck, it often results in things like shoulder impingement and compression and so on. Okay.
Now, I know all about that because when I was at university, my dissertation was on neurovascular compression syndromes of the upper extremity. Try saying that after 5 pints. So it's like, so imagine that you've been working at your desk for 20 years in a forward flex position. I'm sure you can picture that. You would have placed a constant stretch on these muscles, thereby activating the Golgi tendon organs. And the Golgi tendon organs are these little nerves which initiate a stretch, relax response. So during a run-in, for example, when your leg steps forward and plants on the ground, there is an extension force. So you're lifting and becoming more upright, extension force at the spine. But if you're starting from a forward flex position, you would have a greater distance to travel into extension. Thereby, you would expend a lot more energy. You'd be flapping around in the wind, basically. But unfortunately, in that flex position, if it's too far forward, gravity will continue to pull you forward. So your muscle spindles, which are the almost opposite of your Golgi tendon organs, so your muscle spindles, if they're put into a stretch, say really quickly, they'll pull backwards. So arguably, there might be a way to actually pull you upright by forcing you into a flexed position. But if you're too far gone, if you're, if you really flex and you're basically, looking a bit hunchbacky, then it may just continue going forward, unfortunately. So what we would do, the start of the rehab process with this is to stretch those muscles that pull you into flexion, like your rectus abdominis, your obliques, your pec major, for instance, pec minor. So we'd open up the shoulder capsule, really kind of go to work on that whole area. We would also then start to strengthen the extension movements. Okay, extension movements. So picture like a deadlift or anything where you're lifting or pulling. So those muscles that pull, so the muscles will be back, for instance. Excuse me. So we would start to readdress that balance. Okay. I know it sounds quite straightforward, but we would have to. So addressing that balance is crucial. We need to make your deep core more reactive to changes. So as we alluded to, there might be a balance and coordination involved. So we would integrate exercises and movements such as standing on one leg whilst brushing your teeth with the opposite arm. Okay, sounds really simple, but if you're in that forward flex position for the last 20 years or posture isn't your forte, standing nice and upright on one leg while brushing your teeth can be quite taxing, can be quite challenging. Doing basic chores such as hoovering on one leg. Okay, so hoovering on, say, your left leg and using your right arm. So you always try and go across the body because I promise you that's just how the body works. So little things like that, sitting on a Swiss ball, sitting nice and upright posture, sitting on those little bony bits of your bum, lifting one leg without shifting your body weight. Okay, I could go on and on and on. This is just the deep layer, in fact. So, but it's important that we start making that a bit more reactive. So as you go on, as you start getting more reactive, it might not be, you're brushing your teeth on one leg might be really easy even after a week. Okay, well now it's time to move around a bit. So standing on one leg, throwing and catching a ball with someone else. Throwing and catching a ball not just in a straight line, but diagonally, guessing where that ball's going makes you more reactive. And it's these sorts of things that you would want to progress on. And I used to do this with clients. People used to say, well, why are you doing circus tricks? Why are you doing that? And I would have to explain all this to other trainers. And all of a sudden they'll go, well, yeah, I still think it's shit. Right, yeah, brilliant. You obviously haven't grasped the fundamentals of how the nervous system, your anatomy and physiology actually work. Brilliant. And people are paying you why. And it's not me being, all, snotty and, oh, look at that trainer, doesn't know anything. It's not about that at all. I believe within personal training, within therapy and so on, that there is a general ignorance with such things. And if people don't know what it is you're doing, they tend to just poke fun at it or criticize it without really understanding. It's like barefoot running. I do a lot of barefoot running, or running in my Vibram 5 fingers, or my Zero shoes, or my Vivos. And even if I go on a park run, so in the UK, there's these free timed runs, 5k runs that you can do. And even on those runs, people go, "Oh, what the fuck are you in those for? What are you doing?" As they're plodding along, hearing all their joints creaking, panting within the first 500 meters. I'm like, well, running efficiently is what I'm doing. But I don't want to explain that, obviously. That's for another time. Anyway, we go on. I digress. Sorry. So far we've established your core is definitely your spine. So we then have like a middle layer, and this has muscles you may have actually heard of. So your transverse abdominis, or your TVA, which is a muscle that wraps around your entire torso. To activate this, on your exhale, draw your belly button in towards your spine. That's your TVA. Your internal obliques can flex your trunk. It can also help cause intra-abdominal pressure when lifting or running. So it starts to compress the area if you need to lift something heavy, push something above your head, or stabilize during running. Your multifidus. So these are muscles of your spine again. It extends most of your spine and can create extension when on one leg, and control rotation of your vertebrae, which is especially helpful in force transmission. Diaphragm. So your diaphragm, you may have heard of, is your main breathing muscle. Yes, it's a core muscle. How's your breathing? When did you last do breath work in a core class, or practice this when running? If your diaphragm is not working as well as it should be, this will exacerbate your stress response, for instance, increasing catabolic hormones. So catabolic means to break down. So catabolic hormones, increasing glycogen expenditure, decreasing recovery. Okay, these are all things that you may not want in your life right now. This will also hypertrophy your scalene. So hypertrophy means to build your scalenes and your sternocleidomastoid and mastoid. I love that muscle name. And these are muscles of your neck, so in the anterior, the front part of your neck. And if these start to strengthen, if these start to grow, it will start to pull your head forward into a forward head posture, thereby exacerbating issues on your, especially your C-spine, and then your thoracic spine then will have to take the brunt of it as well, and so on and so on. So straight away you can see that your diaphragm is intrinsically linked to your posture and your core stability. But yeah, when's the last time you actually took time to work on breath work and your diaphragm? Your pelvic floor, you may have heard your pelvic floor. This will counteract the intra-abdominal pressure exerted by the other muscles, but it also shares the same nerve with your multifidus. So interestingly, when we get back pain, for example, your multifidus atrophies fairly quickly. An easy way to prevent this is to squeeze your pelvic floor for 10 seconds and release for 5 seconds, and do about 10 reps. So to squeeze your pelvic floor, for instance, imagine you're busting for the toilet and you're going to hold it in. That's your pelvic floor. So it's to draw up through for the guys, your undercarriage, for the women, through your vagina. And I know people don't like to think in those terms, but it's true. So once you can do that, for instance, stand up and place your index finger and your second finger in between your spine and the first big muscle. There's like this little groove between your spine and your erector spinae muscles, which you might be able to feel. So imagine you place that on the right-hand side. In that gap, if you squeeze your pelvic floor, you'll feel the multifidus actually pop up. It'll be quite subtle. Don't expect it to be like a bicep bulge, but it'll be quite subtle. So just gently rest your fingers on top of the skin, squeeze your pelvic floor, and you'll feel it. Now step forward with your left leg, you'll feel it even more. So squeeze your pelvic floor, keep it contracted, and then step back. And what this does, this will help build coordination, help control rotation of your vertebrae. So really good for runners to start building that coordination level up, especially if you suffer from frequent back pain. especially when running or weightlifting and so on, as a top tip. So we also have an outer layer which consists of your rectus abdominis, which is your main six-pack muscles, which, mine are there somewhere, I'm sure, which actually eccentrically contracts. So eccentrically means it lengthens under a tension, not shortens, as stomach crunches will have you believe. So it actually eccentrically contracts and in turn fires muscle spindles which pull you into flexion. Okay, so actually you lengthen through your torso as your foot plants, and then you go into a minor flexion. I know, you still with me? External obliques can both laterally flex, so remember side to side. It can stabilize, but more importantly, rotate the torso when on one leg. So if I stand on my right leg, for instance, it will rotate to the opposite side. So really crucial in running. Unfortunately, my posture has to be perfect for that to take effect. So if my posture is more hunched, it's more kyphotic, as we would say, so your shoulders are rounded, your head's rounded, it shortens, your rectus abdominis, it shortens your external oblique, so you can't rotate as much. So you become really inefficient at running, and it places more stress on your spine. So as I'm sure you can appreciate, in runners, posture is one of the first things you should be focusing on. Okay, that is a top tip. The erector spinae, as the name suggests, erects the spine. It keeps you upright and stabilizes your spine during gait, but only with the other muscles. They're team players. We then have your latissimus dorsi, your lats. Yes, they're those big muscles on the sides of your body. And these attach, for instance, one will go from your right arm. It'll travel down. It'll blend into this area called the thoracolumbar fascia, which is what most people consider the lumbar or the lower back. It inserts via this fascia into the opposite glute max. So it's the only muscle which connects your upper body to your lower body fairly directly. So as your right foot lands, your left arm will swing forward and it activates a chain reaction to the opposite glute to help drive through extension. But again, only when you have optimal posture. And as we mentioned, we have glute maximus or glutes, which are your buttocks, and these drive hip extension when you're in flexion. They're also stimulated during your big toe off. Okay, so if you're a heel toe striker, your heel hits the ground, you roll into, your last thing that leaves should be your big toe. If you're a 4-foot runner, it's actually a lot easier. So as your foot glides and lands, your big toe creates a chain reaction that rotates your tibia, that rotates your femur, and then activates your glute max, for instance. Okay, so your core then is really dependent on, during gait, on ground reaction force, so how hard you hit the ground, and gravity, which is that general pull towards the ground. So if your ground reaction force is too high and you don't have the strength, then injury may occur because of this, or what most people consider an overuse injury. And I will come on to this in a bit, actually. We then also have hip adductors. So to adduct means to move towards the inline of your body. But these can also drive extension, so flexion and extension. So we've got adductor magnus, which can do that. And they work synergistically with abductors, such as your glute medius on the side of your hip. They also connect your pelvis to your inner tibia via a common tendon. So your tibia, yes, is your lower leg. So your core is your spine, your abdomen, and more broadly, from your shoulder girdle to your knee region. Wow, that's quite a big area. So when you train the core, are you doing crunches on the floor? Because this just works your rectus abdominis. And that's just one muscle out of so many. It also takes you further into flexion and doesn't stimulate extension, which is how you're actually going to use it, which I find very odd. And again, it comes back to people not questioning what it is they're doing. You can do crunches, which is really you're creating a real flexed spinal position, but it's not going to serve you well if you spend your life there anyway. You probably need extension in your life. Where do you think your internal organs go? They're all bunched and pushing forward. I guess the point out of all of this is to, actually do this in a more intelligent way. So your core program for a runner should consist of balance work. It should consist of lifting, rotation, pushing, pulling, probably crawling. I mean, have you tried or looked at Animal Flow? Animal Flow does all of this. Have you tried or looked at MoveNap? Any of the Czech Institute stuff? Any of the Gray Institute stuff? If these terms are new, just Google them. Okay, there's tons of stuff out there. So how's your plank coming on? Are you still holding your static plank? How are you going to use that whilst running? Did you know a static exercise is stage 1 rehab exercise? Yeah, stage 1. So you can hold your plank for 2 minutes. How is this going to help you run 26.2 miles? Have you ever questioned the logic? Or have you just blindly gone with it? And this is for trainers and therapists as well as, anyone who's listening, really. Have you ever questioned why? So I want to make clear, a plank is a good exercise, but you need to progress it as soon as you can. You need to start moving as soon as you can. So for instance, get in a plank position, start by alternating leg lifts as if you're walking. So what this does, it starts to teach the nervous system how you want to move whilst controlling your pelvis. Okay? So you need to progress that on. Why not bring your feet in as if you're going to crawl and maintain your spinal position whilst performing alternate leg and arm lifts? Okay, so still squeezing your pelvic floor, still drawing your belly button in, still lifting on the exhale. So still doing all that, but it becomes more fun as well. Well, I think it does. Well, let's move on a little bit. Let's move on a little deeper into injury amongst runners. So I alluded to this before. So common injuries amongst runners, or complaints, I should say. Plantar fasciitis. So your plantar fascia is the bottom arch of your foot, as most people would think about it. Achilles tendonitis, so inflammation of your Achilles. Patellofemoral pain syndrome, or most commonly runner's knee. So that's the main tendon that goes from your kneecap to your tibia. Stress fractures, hamstring pulls, shin splints, and IT band syndrome. These are the most common complaints globally. Even with, an increase in, running trainers, you can buy running trainers now for 130, 140, 160 pounds. That's bonkers, absolutely bonkers. And yet running injuries still maintain around 79% globally. And it doesn't change, even with the increase in technology. So again, let's start questioning the logic. So what if I was to tell you that all of these are a mixture of improper running technique, improper recovery strategies, lack of strength, and either too much mobility or not enough? And obviously poor core control as above. None of these are to do with your running trainers. They're to do with what you're doing as an individual, not what's external to you. Okay, and I need to make that clear, because this is the hardest thing as a rehab professional, as a performance professional. This is the hardest thing to get across when I'm treating injuries. That someone will say, "Well, I've got an overuse injury." I'm like, okay, let me break that down a little. So a lot of therapists and trainers state that these are overuse injuries, which is part of the issue, yes. But I would say it's an overused poorly issue. So it shouldn't be overused is my point. It's overused because your running technique is not efficient. You then overuse something because you haven't addressed the main problem. So it's overused, but it shouldn't be. So when someone overstrides, especially, so someone overstrides, so that's where your foot lands out. It should land under your hips. So if it lands outside of your hips, the ground reaction force will be really high, especially if you're heel toe. So ground reaction force, if you're a heel toe runner and you're overstriding, you will feel this in your knee. Okay, so patellofemoral syndrome, for instance, I would look at your stride pattern straight away, because the shock in your knee will be phenomenal. Okay, if you've got like an intertrochanteric bursitis, so it's an inflamed burst on the side of your hip, again, I would look at overstriding, especially if you're a heel toe striker. Again, just point it out there. Hopefully this will help you. But if someone overstrides, especially heel toe, shin splints can also be a real issue, along with you're doing too much too soon. Okay, so if you haven't done anything in a while, you're overstriding, you'll definitely get shin splints. And people will often say, oh, how do I get rid of shin splints? And I'll say, I'll just shorten your stride pattern and do more consistent, shorter runs. You know, do a bit of stretching, a bit of strength work. And they'll say, oh, so what trainer shall I buy? I'm like, I don't give a shit. Just buy whatever you want. I'm like, that's not the problem. Buy something that you just want to run in, you know, initially. Then you can lay it down the line. If you want to buy fancy trainers, go for it. But you need to sort out you, not your trainers. Stop, you know, looking for a way out. A long-term issue from this, for instance, is stress fractures. And this occurs when you can't distribute the impact forces. So you get a higher peak force with every stride, so a higher ground reaction force. So imagine it peaks and then troughs, peaks and then troughs. It shouldn't peak. It should be more of a, you know, a wave. So again, lessen your stride pattern. Get someone to look at your gait, someone to look at your posture. Your foot should land under your hips. Your hips should be underneath your shoulders. Your head should be in a nice lengthened position. Work on posture, shorten your stride pattern, and take it easy. Okay, you don't have to go hell for leather. Then again, I'll promise you, for majority of you, it will solve a lot of issues. Again, you don't need to have anything fancy going on. Hamstring pulls are often the result of a weak or non-active core. So when people say they have tight hamstrings, it's because your nervous system is reacting to an inefficient core. So your hamstrings attach from your hip and they attach to your lower leg. So imagine your nervous system is then thinking, geez, man, we've got a wobbly hip. We've got a crap lumbar. How can I get my pelvis and lock it against an anchor? Well, my hamstrings can lock my hips against my knee. So it's worth considering that tightness is secondary to a weakness. Okay, muscles don't suddenly become tight. So if you've got tight muscles and you're constantly stretching them and you think, oh, I've got tight muscles, it's not that. It's your nervous system winding them up. Okay, because there's a perceived weakness. So address the weakness. And yeah, hamstring pulls are normally the result of a weak or non-active core. Okay, so what are you doing about that? Things like IT band syndrome are a mixture of weak glutes, too much contact time with the floor, causing more of a lateral displacement. You may also have some foot issues. So it's what we call a frontal plane issue. So I used to get this. And when I looked at my gait, it's because I was slightly overstriding and my contact time, so my foot was spending too much time with the ground pulling through. So I needed to shorten my stride pattern, and I then changed to a forefoot runner, and I've never had that issue ever again. And bear in mind, I had IT band syndrome for about 5 years, off and on. It was so painful. Had physios look at it, they analysed everything. And in the end, I went and got a sports rehabilitation degree within that time and figured it out for myself. And I haven't looked back since. I find it absolutely bonkers. Look at the obvious, sort it out. People tend to look for things that aren't there. Okay, so IT band syndrome is a frontal plane issue. If you want to know what a frontal plane is, I talk about another podcast. I've also got kind of videos of it on YouTube, and it's also on my new online course, How to Be Your Own Fitness Trainer. So yeah, check it out. Achilles issues, for instance, are due to inefficient foot placement or poor ankle mobility and strength. So more commonly in forefoot runners like myself, because the Achilles undergoes a bit more stress. But again, with good mobility work, good strength work, better foot placement, again, having a nice short stride pattern, you'll never see it. Plantar fasciitis is poor foot and ankle mobility. Again, I had plantar fasciitis. Is one of the first running injury I had, and I had it for about 2 years. Again, people say, oh, you need to stretch it out. You need to do this. Yeah, stretching is okay. It's part of, but more globally, you need to look at your foot as a whole. So you've got 33 joints in your foot. Okay, it turned out that a couple of those joints weren't working properly, and this actually exacerbated the issue. So I went through a lot of foot mobilizations, walking around barefoot. I needed to strengthen my feet, basically. What you don't need to do is excessively stretch your plantar fascia. Excessively stretching and placing more stress on your plantar fascia is the worst thing you can do. You need to strengthen and mobilize your foot and your ankle. Okay, that's what it is. Strengthen and mobilize. Strengthen and mobilize. Or I should say, mobilize, then strengthen. Mobilize, then strengthen. Nothing more than that. Again, it may be with you for a while, but symptoms will get better. As a top tip, give it a little massage with your thumb before you get out of bed in the morning. Because one of the issues you get with this is people just jump out of bed and they feel it and they go, oh, that hurt. And basically you start tearing it. So if you get the blood flow into it, you massage it, from the base of your heel all the way to the base of your big toe, really kind of get wiggle your thumb in there. It'll be uncomfortable, but do it between 2 to 5 minutes every morning. So when you step out of bed, do it slowly and you'll increase the healing time quite drastically. And again, you'll give yourself that window to do the mobility and strength work. Again, that's a top tip from a rehab professional. So either way, all of these injuries or syndromes can be gone with better progressive program design. Better recovery strategies such as getting quality sleep. Sleep is your main recovery, basically. Nutrition, getting the right amount of protein. Okay, and runners are notoriously, they don't get enough protein. So you get enough protein, vitamins, minerals, quality unprocessed organic foods. Get some hydration in your life. Okay, make sure you're fully hydrated. The fascia in your body needs water to glide and slide efficiently. You need hydration. Make sure you do some breath work. Spend some time dedicated to yourself. Improve techniques such as shorter gait running. So you should be running about 180 BPM, beats per minute. Okay, so maybe if you're running with music, find music that's 180 BPM and it will help you with your stride pattern. Improve your posture. It's the first thing you should do. Improve your posture. Become more aware of your posture. So your shoulders are over your hips and your foot lands under your hips. It should be one line. Better breathing mechanics. Okay, so maybe you breathe in for a couple of strides, breathe out for a couple of strides. So regulate your breathing pattern. Try and breathe through your nose where possible. Mobilizing for optimal range of motion. So you could use things like a foam roller. Foam rollers are quite good for mobilizations. Again, I go through extensive mobilizations in my new online course, How to Be Your Own Fitness Trainer. Show you the video how to mobilize your ankles, your hips, your shoulders, and so on. Fantastic for runners. Strength work with weights is not the same as circuit training. Circuit training is good for overall, conditioning, but runners need to do proper strength trainings, proper weights. Okay, your cardiovascular system will get enough training through your running, your cycling, your swimming, whatever it is. It'll get enough through that. So make your weight training your weight training. Make it your strength training. Okay. Squats, deadlifts, lunges, push and pull with a lot of core work. Okay. I'm hoping that this is becoming fairly clear that to be injury free, to improve running performance, improve running technique is more than just buying expensive trainers and trying to go as long and hard as possible. Be intelligent with it. This is especially true as you're getting older. Okay. So I hope this has helped someone out there with something. I would say if you're interested in buying our new online course, it's the website to that is OneZen. So that's the word OneZen. 4, the number 4, all. So OneZen 4, all. .thinkific.com. So Thinkific is think, T-H-I-N-K. Ific is I-F-I-C. So Thinkific, all one word, .com. So OneZen for all. .thinkific.com. and that will take you through to our the landing page for the course itself. And the course is over 7 lessons, really straightforward. It's designed for the non-fitness professional in mind. But part of that, we take you through, progressive warm-ups and cool down, dynamic stretching, static stretching, mobilizing those joints to increase range of motion in a healthy way. We go through the exercises, so it's all audio visual. You can download the PDFs to read in your own time. You can access it on your phone. You get a lifetime subscription. We go through real strategic cardiovascular training. So we talk about zone training 1 through 4, how that applies to your body's various energy systems. So it's done in a very intelligent way. The feedback on it has been really positive, and I'm deeply honored by that. Or for more information, you can read some of our blog posts. That's onezenacademy.com. Or if you want some online personal training or face-to-face personal training and therapy work, it's onezenwellness.com. Or just contact me. Make sure you write hopefully you'll write a review, give us a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify and so on. But yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for your time, and enjoy your running, swimming, cycling, or your triathlons, I guess. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for listening to the One Zen Fitness Academy podcast. Make sure that you subscribe. Please give us a 5-star review. And please, if it's not too much trouble, write review. For more information, go to www.onezenacademy.com for all your fitness, wellness, and health needs. Have a fantastic day. Thank you.